On air. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everyone to the largest, fastest growing, and the most active large scale Scrum uh, meetup. Has gone viral since a couple years back. We started in New York City, but now we're global. Thank you everyone for joining and participating. Today we have a special guest, a unique special speaker. His name is Bob Schatz, and I would like to say just a couple of words about Bob to give him the honors and the credit he deserves. Bob has over 40 years of experience in software systems and organizational development, with a heavy focus in on AI strategy development over the last couple of years. He is a founder of Agile Infusion LLC, his own company through which he services customers around the world. Uh, he works for clients, with clients, to create trusted partnerships and provide advisory, consulting, and training services. And Bob is one of very few certified Scrum trainers and people that are certified in cognitive project management for AI and AI management professional um, dimension. So he's very well versed and very highly accredited. His career journey took him throughout almost everywhere. He went through managing large scale mission critical projects to mid-sized projects to small projects. And some of his biggest accomplishments, biggest clients have been Primavera Systems, Liquid, General Electric Aerospace, Lockheed Martin, and some others. And today he will talk about a very um, interesting, very engaging, very galvanizing topic. So without any further ado, Bob, I would like to pass this over to you so you can, you know, engage and entertain everyone with this great subject. So thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thanks, Gene. And thanks for the introduction and happy to be here today. Hi, everybody. Good to see all of you here. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time with me. And today we're going to talk about, as the title says, about managing AI. Obviously, I'm sure you're all aware, artificial intelligence has become a huge topic and everybody wants to get into it. And from a project management perspective, as I've spent most of my years trying to figure out better ways of delivering value to customers, this presents a lot of different challenges than we're used to. And for those of you in the Agile community who have done your best over the past 30 years, if you've been in that long, I know I've been around it that long. Uh, it's actually an interesting time because we have to start thinking about how we adapt the practices that we have become so used to. And in a way, as I've told many people, I said, we used to uh, put a lot of pressure on people that were holding on to the waterfall too tight. And I think we may, in a sense, be doing that ourselves with some of the frameworks like Scrum and some of the practices that we typically use. So it's kind of interesting to have a discussion about that. And I'm going to be, I'll go through some stuff and hopefully we'll have plenty of time to have some questions, discussion back and forth. I know in Gene's uh, webinars, I know that I've done one before and it was great too. It's kind of set up to have more discussion. So I don't mind doing that at all. So as far as questions and all that, let me get through some of this stuff and then I'll leave plenty of time so we can have some question and answers, discussion, thoughts. Artificial intelligence is an area where even if you have some level of expertise, we're all really just at the beginning. So, yeah, you got to put some time in and learn a lot of stuff, but it's still very early on, and there's a lot of discovery still happening. So, thank you again for being here, and hopefully this will be somewhat helpful for you. And if I can learn how to advance a slide, that would be even better. So, Gene did a pretty good job there of introducing me. the companies he was talking about were companies that I had worked at, and for the last almost, well, 19 years now. I've been working with companies, like I said, around the world, trying to help them in their projects. I am a certified Scrum trainer, so you would think that everything is Scrum, but I am maybe somewhat unique on that. I don't really believe that everything is Scrum. My world does not revolve around Scrum, even though I'm a Scrum trainer. I was involved in this early on, but with my clients, I take a very holistic approach, trying to really understand what exactly are they dealing with? What is the situation? What are the conditions? And then I'll open up my toolbox and decide with them what would be the best approach. So try to spread myself a little out a little bit so that it's not just so uh, tunnel vision focused in one thing. So that's what I've been specializing in. Um, and I've done my professional career in academics, trying to figure out better ways to advance the efforts of my clients so that they're able to serve their customers in the best way and hopefully not too much damage to themselves as they do it. So I won't bore you with any more of those details. Um, what we're really trying to look at here as we go through this is really just give you some kind of background in looking at the value of agile approaches in AI product development. So again, there's two really big aspects of AI that we're all sort of getting inundated with, and it's sometimes hard to separate them. But one is the use of AI. That's the big one because Gen AI has become very popular. ChatGPT, Perplexity, Copilot, and then all the little tools around that are just fascinating. I mean, every day it changes. So there's the tools you use as a professional, but then there's the other side of it, which aside from my obsession with all these different tools, is like how do you actually develop AI? Not just Gen AI, because that's just one type. There's other things that have been around a lot longer and pose a lot of different challenges and projects. And so we're going to focus on that a lot. And really trying to look at the similarities and differences between what you would call traditional software development and then looking at artificial intelligence, machine learning, or data product development and how that might be different. And then we'll talk a little bit about, your skills and what you can do to sort of further yourself in this new era. And I don't think that's an option of whether you should decide to do that. I think as a professional, if you have not already, decided to dive into this, I would suggest maybe this weekend you start poring over some things and get yourself used to this because it is not going away. First thing I usually like to talk about in these types of presentations is what is on everybody's mind and on LinkedIn at least 8 times a day in my feed. It aggravates me, but I feel like I need to bring it up here. Agile's not dead, as people love to report. If you look at how technology is developed now, we have been at these agile practices for nearly 30 years. If the people that are developing AI are working in cross-functional teams, they are iterating, they are involving customers, they are getting feedback. So these techniques that we have all embraced are not going anywhere. Nobody's going back to the waterfall. We're not tiling back to 1970. That's not happening. I know people think that's what's happening, but it's all hyped up nonsense. And I think it's best to understand that these things are not going away. I think what is going away, and it it is long overdue, I think, is all the hype around it, all the dogma, all the framework debates that people just love to have all the time. I think the market has spoken. If you look around what's going on in the job market, in training markets and all that stuff, the voice is very clear. This stuff has set in. It's the pretty much de facto way that most things are done, and it's not going anywhere. But everybody's tired of talking about it. And it's kind of interesting because when I think about over all these years training this and coaching people in it, there's one question that has been around from the very beginning, and people always used to ask me, and still do, what do you think the future of Agile is? Where do you think it's going? And this is going back, over 20 years ago. And I kept saying, and I'm going to repeat it here, uh, I hope that there's some day where we're not talking about this anymore, that it just became the way we do things, and it's not a discussion. And I feel like we are pretty much there. We're almost there. And so I think that's what's happening. So these practices are built for complex adaptive environments. We're obviously in that, and so it's a good match. As far as certifications, which people love to bash certifications and talk about the false sort of narrative that oh, just because people go to a 2-day class and get certified that there's some kind of expert in something. Nobody ever believed that. I don't know where that comes from either. So certification is just like everything else. You go to a training class, you get something, right? You get a certificate, you get a certification. The value of it is determined by the market. It is not determined by the trainer. It is not determined by the student. It is not determined by any organization that facilitates it. It is the market that decides the value of those certs. And other people have certified things. It's not just agile practices. And if you are aware and engaged in any kind of training today, if you go to LinkedIn Learning, you go to Amazon and look at the training they offer, Google, Meta, NVIDIA, anything in the uh, artificial intelligence space. I guarantee you every little course you take, I don't care if it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 days, 2 months, you're getting a badge and some kind of certificate. So people want that. They want some mark that, hey, I put some time in, I learned this. I want to put it up on my LinkedIn profile or my resume, whatever it is. And that's what people want. So that's what everybody offers. So, again, as you're learning, this is just the way things are, always has been. The market determines the value of what you learn and what you tend to put up there on your profile. So these practices are not going anywhere, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody believes they're going somewhere. I'd love to know where we're going because I know we're not going backwards. If anything, it's getting faster and faster in terms of how we have to deliver. And now we're going to have some technology that's going to assist us. So just want to address that because that seems to be a big topic. As far as AI and why it's becoming so popular, obviously, generative AI has really propelled it forward. Not just generative AI in general, but specifically OpenAI and the release of ChatGPT in November of 2022 really started to propel the industry forward when people started realizing what is possible. So then you start looking at, what drives the world. It's not the fascination of technology, it's whether it can be monetized and what value it brings. So there's some statistics here listed up there. I think the most notable one, as far as what we're talking about here, why would it become so important? It's that one in the middle. It says businesses can expect a 6 to 10% revenue increase from AI. You don't have to say anything else. Any executive that can see that and said, if any, research firm said that 6 to 10% revenue increases from AI, guess what we're doing? AI. Like that's no brainer. We're gonna get to like I'll take the 6, even if we don't get the 10. So that's a big one. But on the side of the project management space, we also have to be aware that there's statistics that only 26% of AI projects make it beyond a pilot stage. 87% of data science projects never make it into production. And 96% of organizations have problems with data quality, data labeling, and model confidence. So there is a big hurdle to get some of this stuff out there. Now, again, there's simple things that people are using, incorporating a chat bot into their websites or, trying to amp up their customer service by having a bot respond, a lot of agents, productivity tools. Those that stuff's rolling out pretty fast, right? That's why you hear people saying, "Oh, we can roll out something in 10 minutes," right? True. That is true. But go to a regulatory space like pharma and tell me you're going to roll out an AI solution in 10 minutes. I would probably challenge that. There's a lot more to it, in bigger businesses where you have possible legal exposure. So there's all kinds of issues involved with that. And so, from a project management perspective, that means you need to instill some discipline, process, and understanding of how to get things done properly. And that's going to be a necessary thing, right? The hype is interesting, but the reality is there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and uh, and there's a lot of risk involved as well. So that's what kind of drives this. This is just a little diagram so everybody can understand some of the terminology that gets thrown around. So overall, artificial intelligence is a field, much like Agile is a field. It's like an overarching sort of approach, if you will. Everybody likes to debate what the word means, but it's sort of a container for a lot of different things. Within the artificial intelligence container, we have things like machine learning, which is more of the we'll call that the traditional artificial intelligence things, where there's things like predictive analytics, decision making. The roots of that went back to things like expert systems. I know I was involved a lot in when I was in aerospace and defense in using expert systems, but everything had to be coded. It was all hundreds and hundreds of developers coding rules. We didn't have the horsepower, the data, cloud computing to do what we're now seeing in machine learning. So we've seen things like that. Then going a little deeper, you have an attempt to mimic how the human brain works, as if we can figure that out. But like from a scientific perspective, I guess. And we have these artificial neural networks, and then that led to what we call deep learning, which starts to expand the complexity in which we can detect things and make decisions. And that can increase the accuracy and complexity of what can be done, but it also requires a lot more horsepower, a lot more data, and it becomes less and less transparent. So even though there's a lot of power, and it can do stuff, we can often not explain how it actually happened. So that's what makes it kind of interesting. And of course, Gen AI came out of that, where you now have something that can generate what is referred to as novel content, which I'm sure everybody's had a shot at that. And yeah, it's pretty impressive stuff. In my opinion, I'm like fascinated every day with something new that's coming out and some new capability that people are putting in that's related to generative AI. So that's the thing that you're going to probably be most interactive with as in your daily doing your work. That's going to be your sort of expert assistant in helping you do your job. So in addition to maybe building Gen AI solutions, you are definitely going to be using it. And then some of you might be involved in some of the more in-depth, machine learning, using algorithms to build models and make predictions and, do all kinds of fun stuff like that. So that just, give you a little overview of that. And then this is a pretty common thing in AI with 7 AI patterns. These are the typical solution spaces that we typically will be getting into. And some solutions might be a combination of two or three different ones. And the thing with these is it kind of helps shape some of the risks and some of the considerations you need to have as you go into it. Some of them are easier, some are extremely difficult and uh, require a lot of data and horsepower, like autonomous systems. If you think about like self-driving vehicles, stuff like that. Some of the easier things, which we've seen already and are interacting with on a regular basis, like conversation things like virtual assistants, Siri, Alexa, those types of things. And then you have the chatbots, who hasn't gone to a website or gotten a text message from some company you're dealing with, and you can chat back and forth and hopefully realize like I'm not talking to a human. This is just an interactive exchange between me and a computer. So it's kind of interesting. And then, of course, you have recognition systems, hyper personalization. We've all been affected by, all your feeds and all your social media, all your the ads that come at you, even if you're on like Netflix and something like that, and you're seeing what's being presented to me, it's only being presented to you. It's tuned to an individual. That's the hyper personalization instead of saying, well, people on the East Coast like this, people who like this movie like this movie. Now it's getting down specifically to you. And the more data that you keep giving it access to by saying, I agree to different license agreements that you click, the more data it has about you, the more specific it gets to you, which is great from a consumer perspective, but you can also be led down rabbit holes. And we've all seen some of the dangers of that as well. So there's extreme power here, and there's also some risks involved. Then there's patterns, anomalies, uh, fraud detection. You know, if you get a credit card alert that says, "Hey, did you just charge this?" You know, that's fraud detection. It's looking at a massive amount of data and trying to understand, like, hey, would that be you? Is your phone with you? Right? A lot of kind of stuff. Predictive analytics about making future predictions and goal-driven systems, which are like trying to achieve something like that would be like routing, like Google Maps, or maybe a UPS or FedEx trying to figure out what are the best routes for their drivers. That would be goal-driven systems. Uh, so these are just some of the patterns that are out there. Now, as far as the differences, so you look at this, obviously there's some differences between developing what we call traditional software versus AI. Big difference to understand is that software development is very deterministic, meaning that when you code something and it executes and then you execute it again and again and again, it does the same thing. You might be giving it different input, but the calculation or the logic does the same thing every time. In AI development, it's probabilistic, meaning that every time you do something, something else happens. It's not going to be the same every time. And there are levels of accuracy that we can achieve in some reasonable fiscal spending, and getting higher than that costs a lot of money. We'll talk more about that. You have unpredictable data dependencies, meaning that models are trained on data, and getting that data and controlling the sources is not always under your control. So a lot of issues there. You have rapidly evolving scope because things are changing so fast. Everything in AI development is about data. 80% of projects are data engineering. So it's a lot of data work and much less code work. And with Gen AI, most of those things are right in the code now. So it's kind of really interesting what we're doing. And data and models have a tendency to change, to drift. So data drift is when the data starts changing, and as it's people are feeding your model, they start feeding it with different things, so it starts to drift, and the model will drift based on what it's learning, and then models also will hallucinate. So sometimes, like even if you go to a chat GPT, which has obviously gotten much better over time, it's actually incredible. But there used to be high incidence of hallucinations where you can get you, especially when you're asking it like more factual things, like who's this world leader, and it'll start spitting stuff out. It looks like a legit biography, but then you start reading it, it's like, wait a second, that person never actually did that, So sometimes it'll hallucinate. It looks real, but the content isn't. And obviously, if you're interacting with customers on a customer service or something like that, that can get pretty nasty. So you got to watch out for that. And then, of course, with AI, there's always the creepy factor, as we call it, where humans will take technology up to a certain point, and we're fascinated by how it interacts with us. But when it starts getting too close to you, in other words, it knows too much about you. It's asking you questions about things that you never told it, like that kind of stuff. Or it looks too much like a human. Like, we're always thinking about robots in our houses and stuff like that. It's one thing to have that iRobot thing that's vacuuming your floor. It's another to have a robot like that may be human-like, with human features and no, not just a machine looking thing, and it's doing the same thing, right? Like you might think for a minute, like, okay, that's cool. That thing is living in your house, right? Like that gets creepy. So there's a level where we're willing to accept this, and then it starts to get a little crazy after that. So figuring out where that line is, and knowing that right now we're still at the very early phases of what is possible, it starts making you think like some of the science fiction that we've always, consumed is now pretty much a reality. So it's kind of interesting. Uh, the other thing is your teams, and it's not so much the structure of the team, but the skills and how we work is going to be changing. And of course, there are uh, ethical considerations of creating AI. Like, like we always say, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And so you really have to start thinking about, is this something we should be doing, even though we know we can do it? And then, of course, societal issues of, are we augmenting humans or replacing humans? There's a tremendous fear about being replaced, and people lose, the thing I always think it's funny when AI was starting to become big over the last couple of years, people used to say, well, AI is going to be doing the repetitive menial work that humans don't like to do, and that'll free you up to do all the creative things. And what I have seen is no, it is doing all the creative things. And then you start thinking like, wait, it's doing all the creative things and the repetitive things, and I'm supposed to be freed up to be more creative. The question I would have is somebody paying me to be more creative, or is this thing just taking my job? So there is a realistic fear there, and we do need to be worried about it and think about what that means. And there's a lot of bias in training data. So even though you're using past data, which is the only thing we have to train models, inherently by using data that is existed in the past and it has inherent bias in it, you pass that bias into the model, and now it could cause issues with things like, when you look at hiring and firing of people, loans, credit, things like that, where, it has not been an even playing field around the globe, since the beginning of data. So, there's bias in there. And now the models have bias. So decisions can be made that, put a group in a lower category or something, and that has, implications to it. So those are things we have to worry about as well. So there's also all the hype, the fears, the expectations, which are typically highly unrealistic. We have a fast-moving landscape of tools, platforms, language models, vendors. So even if you think today, like you might hear something today, like, oh, that's cool. Tomorrow it's going to be like totally different. So like every day, I'm fascinated by how fast things are changing. You have the big players, and they're probably going to be around, um, but they also have to make money, and not just stock market money, but they got to make actual income. And we saw this before during the internet when it boomed, that we had a lot of companies out there, but they had no way of making money. So it's kind of interesting. Um, and the other thing about soft AI development is typically you have a lot more work in operations than in development, and that is because the models have to be monitored, they have to be retrained, they have to be adjusted. You have to have humans in the loop to make sure it doesn't go off the rails. That might change in the future as we get more and more control over it. But in today's world and for the foreseeable short future, we're probably going to have a lot more work to do there. So we'll kind of monitor where that goes, but that's something to consider as you're doing that. The things that are the same in AI projects is really a lot of the same problems we've had in all kinds of projects, and that is first identifying a problem that actually needs to be solved. Right, most of the problems that we see in projects, whether they're AI or anything else, is people start solving them before they even know what the problem is, right? We're so excited about problem solving, which is our career, that we'll start actually doing it before we know what the problem is. So identifying a real problem and then identifying the outcomes that we need to achieve in order to create value. is very important. So we can't just do technology for technology's sake, and we can't just run projects because they're cool. It has to move the needle on the business. And so if we don't figure that out from the beginning, then these things can go off the rails pretty fast. So that's all the same. We still need to break things down and prioritize the work. That does not change. We definitely need quality practices, and involving customers and getting feedback are still extremely critical, even more so than what we did in the past, because we are now, whether you recognize it or not, software technology is a totally commoditized industry. And that means that when people get solutions, I don't care how new they are or what the new technology is, and when you're in a commoditized world and people get new stuff, it has to be at a level of quality, consistency, and reliability that is at or above the current standard. So just because it's new, you can't drop below, not in a commoditized world. And if you look at other industries, you've probably seen that as a consumer. The one I always refer to is like electric vehicles, and the fact that anybody that's coming out with electric vehicles and being successful is doing so because those vehicles are at or above the level of a gas powered car. Anybody in the past that tried to come up with an electric vehicle that was sub below that failed, right? And that's what happens because it's commoditized. People have a certain level that they will accept, and that's where they want to be. You might have a few people that want to just try it, but it won't go anywhere, right? So we're at the same place with AI. Even though it's all new and it's novel, it is being introduced into a commoditized environment. And so that's why the pressure is on. And anytime that something screws up, it's immediately taken off the market because the public will not put up with it. So that's even more the case today. We need a lot of quality. We need support from leadership, as you always do in projects, and you need a great team of people with a strong desire to experiment and learn. The key thing is having that attitude that we're going to have to experiment and learn. This isn't take an order, fill an order type work. This is going to require a lot more discovery, a lot more experimentation, and you'll see how that affects what we do in Scrum or Agile practices. So the big three things that frameworks like Scrum give us and we're built for are the same three things that are critical in AI projects, which is iterative development, using iterations to discover and identify what works, having empowered cross-functional teams, even expanding the cross-functional nature of teams to include people like legal, regulatory, right? If any of these situations where you're at risk of something from that perspective, they have to be part of the team. If not tight collaborators, sometimes actually on the team. And it has to be very customer centric. So we have to really focus on the value to the customer, the interaction with customers, the user experience has to be spot on. And we've got to provide ways for users to first let them know that they are interacting with AI that is not a human on the other side. And if they want to opt out of that or try to get to a human, they have to have a way to do that. So you have to kind of really think through the customer experience here. If you're putting something out with your company's name on it, and really understand how uh, customers feel about this and how they want to interact with it and the value that gets to them. So those things don't change. So that's why I say when we're talking about moving forward and people are saying Agile's dead, I'm like, all right, which part of these three things is dead? Because you're not going anywhere without that. I mean, that's the bottom line. So the big things that we had to do in Scrum to adapt, you have extreme level of variabilities. Not all AI is the same. There is a big difference between developing machine learning models using algorithms to deep learning to working with generative AI. There's a huge difference in the complexity and what's out there for those things and what is required. So we can't just lump everything into the same, category. Uh, for things like product backlogs, very hard to define epics and user stories for data products because not every you don't have things that are interacting with users necessarily. One thing that I published on Medium, you can look at it on my LinkedIn profile. I put a Medium article up about this whole idea of, I call it the powers of two, TO, sort of play on words, powers of two. But it changed. I sort of presented a different way of thinking about a backlog, where if you're doing a lot of discovery, you're doing a lot of more research and iterating. It's almost like you have to come up with research questions. So instead of user stories, I have questions to be answered. And instead of epics, it's areas to explore. So you're trying to develop research questions and then answer them. And that's part of what your sprints might look like. You have a lot more dependencies. The things that you can get done in a sprint are very fuzzy sometimes. If you're doing things that are very data intensive, your accomplishment in a sprint might be we located 3 data sources and we validated that we have actually access to them. And we are just starting now to figure out if that data is even usable, clean, organized, right? There's so much data debt that a big part of the project might be just fixing up data. So it's a lot different. We're not going to be at the end of every sprint saying, "Oh, we have a potentially shippable thing," right? And it's kind of interesting because back in the beginning, when Scrum was new, very new, back in the 90s and early 2000s, we didn't really pay much attention to the rules the way people are doing it now. It was like kind of very loose. We were just fascinated with the fact that we could actually prioritize a list of stuff and think about within a 4 week period, maybe getting something done. And that was in software development that was already, 30 years, 40 years as an industry. So we kind of knew what we were doing. But now you're in something again that's very new, and then you have to like loosen it up again. So I think over time, Scrum became very tight with people, and it was spreading across all these companies. Right? "Oh, are you doing it by the book?" Like, I don't even know what book people were talking about, but it's like it became very rigid, actually, like icky rigid. And now it's like you're looking at something new. You have to let it go a little bit. You gotta like let it breathe, and you're gonna have to change sort of what the expectations are. You can't just keep doing something that we know a lot about and then use it on something that we know very little about. So that's going to change a lot. That's a mental change for everybody, and it's loosening the rules up a little bit to let it breathe like that. And it's like I said, it's kind of interesting because that's how Scrum started, and then it was very loose, and then it got rigid, and now we have to loosen it up again. So it's kind of pretty weird. Definition of done is going to be a question, and if you're familiar with the term spikes that we use for research and development type activity, you're going to have a lot more of that. There's going to be a lot more spikes, which means a lot more uncertainty, which is a lot more discovery, a lot more unknowns. So that's going to be how it has to adapt if it's going to survive through this era. Now, many of you might be familiar with the fact that we always say Scrum can wrap around any existing process, right? It's that line out there we always use. And our processes are usually things like CMMI or Prince2, or you might have your own process inside, or you're following and being held to a government standard, right? All those things are your process steps, and we wrap Scrum around that. That becomes the definition of done. Well, in the AI world, there are also frameworks out there that we can use things like Scrum to wrap around. And The original one that was pretty popular was something called Crisp DM, which was for data mining at the time, and it then expanded later on to what is called Crisp ML for machine learning, and they put the Q in there for quality and started adding some things about operationalizing a model. There's CPM AI, which is on the bottom left there. And this is following a very standard set of things that we do, like first business understanding, then data understanding, data preparation, data modeling, model evaluation, and then operationalizing. And you will notice on these, there are arrows flying all over the place, which is the only way they could tell you that it's not serial. It's not a waterfall. It's going to be bouncing all over. You might go to one step and realize that's not possible. You have to go back here. So every path has a path to and from it to another path. So it's showing you it's very iterative. That was the best way people got, I guess, could communicate that. Also very confusing, but if you think about what we do in a sprint, it'll be around those types of activities. And so that's a big one. CPMAI, which I got the certification in earlier this year, but they just got bought by the Project Management Institute. So if you're a PMI fan, they just got bought. Cognilytica was the company they purchased that had this framework, and it's going to start being presented through the PMI. And the PMI also has some pretty good free training out there, 4 good courses if you're looking for some kind of baseline. I would recommend that. It's a pretty good set of stuff they have up there. Plus, if you're in that world, you get like your what is it, PDUs. So that's always good. And Microsoft, of course, has their own the Microsoft Team Data Science process. And again, you see the same kind of things: business understanding, data understanding, development, deployment, all that kind of stuff. And so they're all kind of similar, but it helps you understand what we might be doing within a sprint. There may be, if it's something small and deployable, it might be all these things in one story for one sprint, or multiple stories in a sprint. For other things we might be doing, heavy data intensive model development, you might be able to do a part of a step in a sprint. So it's going to change a lot of what we've come to be used to and have for some of you have, been professing to the world that this is how we do things. Well, yeah, that's how we did it when it was that kind of work. But now we have different kind of work. We're going to have to loosen it up again and show the world that we are also adaptive, right? That you can't have the irony of having an adaptive approach that is locked down like a block of cement. And unfortunately, I feel like we may have gotten ourselves a little sticky in there, and we need to unstick it. As far as the team composition, this is a typical group of people that might be involved in a team that is doing more of a data product or machine learning AI type thing. So you got software developer, design lead, data engineer, scrum master, product owner, still can be the same. Companies are doing all kinds of interesting things right now with that, but I think the overall concept of those roles is still there. Data scientist, machine learning engineer, data quality engineer would be a typical team composition. And, the thing that's going to change for all of us is that these AI assistants are going to be right there with us. Whatever you do, there's going to be a Gen AI component to your job, and it's going to become a member of the team. And I know these little cartoons are indicating, we're going to resist that, unfortunately, but we need to not resist it and just know that it's a tool. It's going to help us. It helps us get the job done better, faster, cheaper, and we need to embrace it, not be afraid of it, right? So that's something I always tell people is like, you got new stuff. I've unfortunately I'm old enough to have seen PCs come out. I've seen the internet, mobile devices, and I see how the fear is just strikes people every time these things happen. And now we have yet another one, and the acceleration of this one is like 10 times faster than what I saw with the internet and how it started to spread. So it's coming fast. It's not going away. People are like, oh, maybe we should put this back in the box. You're not putting it back in the box because it's out of the box. So, and people are just going to keep running with it. So, you got to stay up to speed on it. It's a lot of work. A lot of your free time is going to be consumed with learning some things about this and its capabilities and trying to understand how you could use it as a project manager or whatever other role you might have. It's going to be a real big help. I know I've used it. It's helped me quite a bit. And I'm still a novice at best. That I think everybody thinks they're a novice, but you try every day to just learn a little bit more. This is just a set of skills you might think about in terms of what is out there and the things you should be starting to think about. So I won't go too deep into that. And I wanted to just close again with really trying to understand, the fact that for everybody, I think that the thing I'm trying to convey is just I think it's time to if you're holding on too tight to a process or a way of doing things, we've all had times in our career where we had to kind of rethink, and I think this is one of those times. And you know, some of us have been doing this a long time, so it's sometimes hard. So I collaborated with my friend Julia here, and we wrote a poem. It took ChatGPT 3 seconds to write the poem, and it took HeyGen a minute to get Julia to recite this poem. So I'm going to play this for you. Just see
For
some.
30 years, we've paved the way, urging the waterfall to ebb away. From rigid steps to agile flow, we've taught the world how to let it go. But now a new horizon gleams, the age of AI, the stuff of dreams. No longer just code or a simple design, it's data and models that redefine. Adapt we must, as leaders we rise, to meet this future with curious eyes, blending the old with the bold and new, guiding the journey for what AI can do. So here we stand, with a challenge grand, to shape this age with a steady hand, agile at heart, but rethinking the game, evolving our practices to honor the name.
Okay, so that was there was no human involved in that at all. That was completely computer generated. So that is in just about 1 minute of work. I think I typed in, "Can you give me a poem?" And then I went to HeyGen, gave it the poem, and said, "Can you get Julia to create a video of that?" And that took less than a minute. So, again, just a little taste of what is possible. Uh, you can give some of these tools your picture, and you could be providing a presentation or training session on some topic. It could be nuclear fusion, and you have no idea what nuclear fusion is, but you have a lecture of you actually lecturing on it. So it's kind of scary and powerful at the same time. So anyway, before we get to Q&A, just want to put this up here. My training partner, Hyperdrive, who I run classes through, they're offering a nice little special here. I do run a CSPO course for AI projects, which we go deeper into this and have you do some exercises. And I'm doing a 1 day course. If you had like a CSM or CSPO or just curious about product development, I'm running a 1 day course and doing a series of those. So if you're interested, you got a nice 50% discount there. You just hit the QR code there, or put that in the discount code when you sign up if you're going to sign up, and would love to see people and spend a little more time with you. All right. So anybody got any questions? This is the question and answer part. So I don't know, Gene, do you are you going through the chat window there?
I didn't see in particular too many, mostly comments, so I usually look for question marks. So I would take the hand. I see Jack's hand
All
is
right,
up.
yeah, shoot.
Rule
And I
book.
can I can hang on a little past, so I don't have anything up
Yeah,
against.
I personally, so we're gonna drop a lot now, but in numbers, but we can give another 5 to 7 minutes to this, maybe up to 10.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right, let's go. Jack, you have a question?
Hey Bob, thanks. Yeah, that was eye-opening. I volunteer for a small nonprofit organization in New York with big ambitions. We've got tons of data on interactions between our volunteers and it's mentoring and tutoring for underprivileged students. So we've
Yeah.
got a huge amount of data on the interactions between those groups. This seems like this would be ripe for some sort of an AI exploration, looking for anomalies, patterns, that sort of thing, how we can do better.
Yeah.
Um, where to start?
Yeah. I mean, well, the first thing to understand, and this is one thing I always tell people with that have data and want to start using this. The first thing is when you start to think about, well, two things. Let me just say this. The first thing you always tell people when they're about to jump into AI is before you jump into AI, consider this. Is there any possible solution that you could use that is not AI? I know that sounds kind of goofy, but always,
Well, the that we can use, that really filters a lot of things out
yeah, right?
because we're
Like
not a
something.
technology organization.
Okay, so is it like, I could go into like pull that into Excel and do some kind of analysis in Excel with Copilot, right? So Copilot, which is Microsoft's bolted in version of OpenAI, which they poured all the
Mhm.
money into, now has the ability to take some data and say, "Hey, let me analyze this for you. Can you tell me what these trends are, this trend?"
Okay.
So you're sort of stepping into it without going too far. And that might be one of your first ways of looking at this. If you're familiar with Excel, you have all that
Yeah, we're
data,
up to our ears
and
in spreadsheets, so
yeah,
that would be a good start.
just use Copilot and ask it to start giving you some analysis of the data, right? So that might be an early sort of easy way to get into it. The other thing to consider also, if I were to take all those data files, give it to ChatGPT on a free account, that data is now in the public space. So if that data had any PII, like, information or anything about anybody, Social Security number, any of that, that's now out. Like, in other words, once you feed it to the model, on those free accounts, it's out there. It's being used now. Somebody else might get that information back if they asked a similar question. So you want to be careful with that and make sure that any tools you're using where you're feeding data, that you look at the license that you're on and make sure, like, now they might say, hey, we're not going to use your data for training. And there's a little bit of a trust thing there. But,
Mm.
once you let that stuff go into a public space, it's in the public space.
We have to be really careful because we have
I would
minors
assume.
PII.
I would
Yeah,
assume you would. Yeah. So if you're going to do something like that, before I fed that data into anything, I would clean it and obfuscate the any PII information, like get it out of there so that it's
good.
not, you know what I mean? Like clean it. And
Mhm.
that's probably a good piece of advice.
Thanks. I'm going to check out your classes on hyperdrive too. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Very good. Yeah. Look forward to seeing you.
Bye-bye.
All right. CS, I saw your hand up there.
Yeah, thank you,
I
Dr.
can.
Bob, for giving this information session. My question is very basic level. Like in one of the slides, you have mentioned popular AI frameworks which are
Yeah.
related to Scrum sprints, right? So basically, are the same AI framework used for Kanban flows as well, or they
Yeah. You
have
can.
a different kind of framework for that?
No, the thing to understand about those frameworks is they can be used independently. They're just approaches for creating AI solutions. What my point was that, when we talk about Scrum, we always say it can wrap around whatever process you're using, right? So you wrap it around by making sure that your definition of done is basically the reflection of what that process is. So you can use Scrum as a framework to build AI, and you probably should be following one of those frameworks if you're building like a model or something like that. And yes, you can if you're using Kanban or any of the others, it's the same thing, right? It's really just those are all just approaches for project management, and then you have to think about, well, what's our process, and those popular frameworks are the processes that we would typically follow.
Okay, thanks. And one thing regarding your course, I did not see any course schedule for Scrum Master for AI or project management for AI. I just saw for CSPO
Yeah.
and product. So are you going to schedule something in near future for Scrum Master project management, like
Yeah, I think I'm gonna
50%
take
off or something? Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna take a look at it next year. The thing that was really a big sticking point this year was the product ownership side and making sure that that started to get in play. And I'm a little far ahead of the curve on this, so I want to see like is there a market for it. But that's why we created the 1 day thing, so that if somebody already had like a cert and you wanted to get up to speed on how would you use that in I can do that, in a day without going through all the basics of Scrum and all that. So I'm going to see maybe in 25, if this starts ramping up, I'll create a CSM with AI, and we'll do the 1 day. It doesn't matter what you have. That's sort of agnostic. So yeah, if you wanted to just take the 1 day, that's fine.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
All right, very good. What else? Anybody else? Were there other questions in here? Okay. Can you please iterate the difference between LLM, large language model, SLM, small language model, and multimodal model? Uh, yeah. So large language models are things like ChatGPT are trained on. Uh, they cost ridiculous nation building money to create and eat power like nobody's business. I don't know if anybody's heard, but Microsoft is has now invested hundreds of millions of dollars in bringing 3 Mile Island back up and running for the sole purpose of feeding power to their data centers for Copilot. So these things eat power like nobody's business. So I'm not sure that's really a responsible level way to treat our planet. But large language models are things that are trained on massive, incomprehensible amounts of data to build these models that will generalize and answer pretty much anything, as many of you may have seen. The small language models, SLMs, are an attempt because those large language models are so inaccessible to everybody in order to build them, and they're very generic. The whole idea was try to reduce the footprint and try to get a similar accuracy of response on a smaller amount of things that are specialized. Like if we were doing legal, like we were, trying to sell stuff to lawyers, does it need the entire internet and every piece of human knowledge ever created in the model? No, it needs more tuned to legal. And so the small language models try to reduce the footprint and specialize. And then multimodal models are where you have text, images, uh, um, draw like imagery, like trying to do image recognition. So you've seen a lot of these things. I saw one last night talking about Khan Academy, and they're doing some cool stuff with just holding up your phone and watching kids, draw things and trying to analyze it as a part of the classroom. But multimodal is just all the different modes of information, data, text, imagery, all that kind of stuff that it handles multiple different types of information. So when to use each, it depends on what you're trying to do and how much money you have. And it's mostly money. So most of that, I would say, for the majority of people, you're going to be leveraging what's already out there and probably paying these people their little fair shake until the cost comes down, the footprints come down, and you can run it off your own data centers, right? So again, it really does depend on what you're doing that you would pick that. So that's good. Let's see if time
Thank you.
permits. Yeah, thank you. The question related to Agile Scrum Master, is Scrum Master role evolving as I see on the job? More technical expertise and does it require coding? So Scrum Master traditionally, it is evolving, that's for sure. And there's a lot of different factors involved that probably more than I can answer here. But let me jump to the other part where does it require any technical expertise? It doesn't require it, although you have to look at what a company might be looking for. And the evolution of it is less of the high level coaching because companies have sort of got this set, and that's part of the Agile's dead narrative is, because people aren't hiring scrum masters at the rate they were before. Uh, and some of them are, letting them go. I think that's good. That's an overswing, and they'll probably need to get them back in some level. But I always tell people whenever you're leading people that are doing a certain type of activity, it's probably best that you have some level of experience doing that. In other words, if I were leading a bunch of lawyers, I probably should have some exposure to what it's like to be a lawyer and to do that work than just, say, oh, I'm going to be your coach. So I always advise people to get some level, even if it's just rudimentary, but try to understand the type of work that the people you might be leading or coaching are doing. That does help out quite a bit. It doesn't necessarily require coding experience. Coding experience is something that's about to go through a transition as well, because most of these GPTs can do the coding. So we're going to need people to look at that code, but the sort of junior level coding, I think, is quickly becoming a thing of the past. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but I've seen some absolutely amazing things in terms of what these things can do with code generation. That is, I mean, I know people are going to resist it because I've been in this for 40 some years, and every time there was some self-generating code thing, we all resisted it. But this is finally at a level where you got to start questioning that assumption that maybe we just let this do the heavy lifting. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I would say no, for a Scrum Master, you don't have to be coding.
But we can be a citizen developer,
Yeah,
particular programmer, like no coding platforms like
yeah,
Microsoft Power
yeah.
Platform or something.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I would say like if you're interested in that, you should have that experience anyway, And the job is one thing, but your curiosity should not be limited by your job, right? I mean, you should be seeking out whatever you feel is interesting. That's what I try to do. Very
All right,
good.
folks, do we have one more question? We got time for one more question.
I see Eva's got one. How to prevent the project rewrite every time any Gen AI shift or new features? Uh, well, I mean, the rewrite part, again, depending on what you're talking about rewriting. If you're building Gen AI into your products or something like that, it's going to change. Uh, the best thing we can always do that has never changed is try to make sure that you're accessing things through APIs, that you have a good architecture that's resilient to change, that you can easily move things in and out depending on what is new, and that you don't get too tightly coupled to any particular technology. That's always a general good thing to do anyway. And I would certainly say that anytime you're creating something, assume it is going to change, and it's going to change in very short order. Like, in other words, it's not going to be a long time between changes. It's going to go fast. So anytime you're building it, to kind of consider that isolation in some way. And I think that would be the best way to handle that. Ruba said, can you specify per each AI phase how we implement Scrum properly? Apart from spikes and regular sprints, do we implement something else? Oh, okay. No, I think from what I can see with those processes, the only thing that's really changing is what, aside from the work itself, what can we actually get done in a sprint? I think that's more the expectation of the sprints, that, we're used to every sprint you produce something that you can get feedback on and, put in front of customers, and it's like a feature or something like that. Uh, in some cases with some AI, you can do that, and that's great. Some cases you might just be deploying it every 10 seconds. I don't know. But some of the other stuff, the machine learning, and model development, like I said, you're going to be taking a much more longer view of that, and sprints might be just make up something, gaining access to data, selecting an algorithm, and doing some preliminary view of what it's possible, if it's the right algorithm, to make a decision or classification type thing, to see how it's classifying and if it's good enough for what we're trying to do. So it's a lot more exploratory. And so I don't think the structure of Scrum really changes. It's more of what's happening in those sprints is going to be very different than what most of us are used to. And that's why I said it needs to loosen a little bit, like what the expectation is. We just need to make progress, and breaking it down and having those checkpoints every few weeks or something is not a bad thing to be doing, being very transparent about it, but having reduced expectations about, oh, we're just going to take this big AI thing and we're just going to have a model every 2 weeks, is not realistic. So that definitely has to change. And that's mostly all the people that are involved with Scrum trying to, again, what I say, loosen it up a little bit so that it can breathe, right? Or hanging a little too tight onto it. So hopefully that's helps you with that question.
That was a great answer, Bob. So for folks, at this juncture, I would actually like to do a gradual wrap up so that we can give time back to the speaker, and also some people are dropping and asking if this could be wrapped, so they don't lose out on anything. So first of all, I want to thank Bob. Genuinely, you've done an amazing job. And this is also the numbers speak for themselves. How many people RSVP'd? How many people showed up? And your content is amazing. Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for joining. Also want to make sure that you have direct access to Bob. He is very transparent and active on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, please ask him directly. The video, hopefully we made it, and the materials will be available as well to everyone. So if you have any other colleagues that could not make it, please have them replay it. Okay. On this note, I would like to wrap this up. Bob, thank you very much again.
Gene, thank you so much. As usual, you are a great host, and I appreciate all the efforts for you to put this together.
Thank you very much. It was all mutual. And someone asked for the video that you play, the AI video. So please share it with me offline.
It's in the presentation. It's actually
okay. Then the people want absolutely. That's great.
It'll be there. And if anybody connect in LinkedIn, any questions that we didn't get to, please ask me in LinkedIn. It's perfectly fine, and I'll get back to you. I've been answering a bunch of stuff in the last few days as I've tried to roll this content out and get everybody racked up for the new year. And also happy holidays to everybody too.
Yes, happy holidays. This year, I don't believe we're gonna have, unless there was a one-off, we don't have any more events, but I would love to continue building the community up to, look at the numbers. And we have an amazing speaker early in January as well. So happy holidays, and let's stay in touch, everyone. Okay.
Very good. Thank you all. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend.
Same to you. Thank you, Bob, once again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.